The success in property is about finding the right deals. So what makes a deal a deal? What are we looking for here? Many people go on portals. In the UK, we have portals like Rightmove or Zoopla, and then we trawl through hundreds and hundreds of properties. We look at nice pictures. So what are we actually looking for? What makes a good deal? And what's your criteria? Many people would say, oh, it's the location. Okay, so what are you looking for in a particular location? So we all have different criteria when it comes to what makes a deal a deal. Now, the first thing that's most important when it comes to property investing is that when you're buying property as an investment property, the criteria would be very different from buying property for yourself to live in. Why? Because when we're buying a residential property for ourselves as our own home, we tend to spend money on the property and we get emotionally attached to it. So it's really important when it comes to investment property is to take the emotions out of the game. You're not trying to decorate the property to your own liking and try to add this and that and get an internal decorator to refurbish it to your own standards. We're talking about a property that makes you money. So today I'm going to show you 4 criteria that determines what makes a property deal a fantastic deal. So here we go. Okay, so here's a quadrant. The first thing we want to look at is, which is the most important thing, is called CF. So what does CF stands for? CF stands for cash flow. Cash flow is the most important criterion when it comes to an investment property. So what is cash flow from property? Well, obviously we all know that properties bring you the rental income. So what we're looking at is the net rental income, the net income. After all the expenses, for example, you have to pay your mortgage every single month from the rent, and also you subtract all the costs associated with maintaining the property. What are you left with? The most important thing is to make sure that your cash flow needs to be positive. If your cash flow is breaking even, or if it's negative, you're in a very, very slippery slope. It's a very dangerous territory. Traditionally, a lot of people buy new built properties. So you go directly to the developers, you have a new project, new launch, and then they will give you glossy brochure and then you buy a new property. And usually what happens is these properties are all inflated in price. And as a result, when you take out a bank loan, a mortgage to buy, the mortgage payment is going to be extremely high every single month. Now, especially when you're talking about an apartment in a block and one of those condominiums, you're competing with hundreds of other landlords who are trying to rent the properties to achieve the same thing. And what happens is the rental demand is going to crash while the mortgage payment every single month is extremely high. So what you find is that most people who pay too much for the properties will end up in a negative cash flow situation. What you want is positive cash flow. And that's why I always suggest that, you should stay away from all these new build, new developments, because you're always paying above the odds for these properties, which if a property gives you negative cash flow, is not an asset. If it's not an asset, it's a liability. So you have to be very, very careful. Be aware also with all these people who sell you properties saying that, oh, it's negative cash flow today, but property will give you capital appreciation in the future. Don't buy into that, because capital appreciation is something that's unknown, it's speculative, it's something that happens in the future. If your property is in a negative cash flow situation, then it's a liability. If it's positive cash flow, then even if capital appreciation doesn't happen, it's still bringing you a healthy income every single month. And that is the most important part. That's number 1. So what's number 2? Number 2 is what I call NMI. Let me write it properly. NMI stands for no money in. So what is no money in? And I think we've all heard people talking about buying properties, no money down and using none of your own money. So what's no money in is, despite the fact that when you buy a property, usually you have to take up a bank loan, a mortgage, and you put in a deposit, is when you can actually finance a deal immediately after you bought it to get back whatever money you put in initially, then what you're left with is a no money in deal. And why is it so important? It's because when you can actually get back the money that you put down initially, you can use that money to buy your next property and the one after next. So essentially what we're doing is to recycle our money. The concept of recycling our money is so important because how do you explain how some people can buy hundreds and hundreds of properties? I'm not saying that you have to, but I'm saying that they can buy multiple properties while others are struggling to buy one property and the next and the next. It's because they know how to recycle the money. So how do we do it? Well, it's really important that you understand the difference between the price and the value. So what happens normally when you pay a price for a property, you sit on it, you wait for years to come, and then the value of the property would increase. And then when the value has gone up, then of course you can sell the property to realize your profit, or you can refinance. And then when you refinance, you take out a new bank loan, you pay off the original mortgage, the original loan, and whatever money is left over is the original amount of money that you put in. So now you get your money back. But the problem with that is it would take too long. So are there quicker ways to make sure that you can refinance and recycle your money? And the answer is yes. And that is something for the next video. So for me, what I'm looking for is to make sure that my next deal, when I buy it, I can refinance and get back every single penny that I put in initially, leaving no money in the deal. And that will come in one of the later videos. And the third one is CA. CA stands for capital appreciation. Wow, surprisingly, it's only ranked third when it comes to what makes a deal a deal. For me, the cash flow is the most important. Getting back your money that you put in by recycling it is even more important, but capital appreciation is the third. And of course, we all invest in property because we know that historically, property prices have doubled between every 7 to 10 years all across major countries in the world. So we buy property because we know that it gives you long-term wealth, and the value goes up while you sleep. You know, that's the attractiveness. But capital appreciation has to be a bonus to you, because if you find that someone is giving you a deal that has good capital appreciation potential, but it's in negative cash flow, for me, that's not a deal, because capital appreciation is speculative. You don't know when that's going to happen, how it's going to happen. By the time it happens, you probably lost so much money here that your property portfolio, it becomes unstable. You probably won't even sustain this property business. So capital appreciation has to be a bonus. So there will be a video later on to talk about how to speculate on real estate, and inevitably there has to be a certain degree of speculation. Where do you buy? When people talk about location, yes, that's definitely one of the reasons, but that's not everything. But capital appreciation ranked third. And last but not least is what I call flips. This is probably a new concept to many people. Flipping a property deal means, instead of taking on a property, sourcing a property to accumulate, what you're trying to do is to sell it on very quickly and make all the money in between. You're trying to get as much margin from the sale as possible. That's flipping a deal. So when it comes to flipping deals, there are different ways of doing it. So traditionally, what people would have done would be to find a very run-down property that is not even mortgageable. Banks don't even lend on those properties. They will use finance, they will use their own money, cash. Maybe they will try to refinance their own homes, or use a very expensive bridging loan to buy this property outright. And then they will start doing work to the property. We all know that properties we can renovate and add value to it. And then we transform the property, and now we can actually put it on the market to sell it on. So that's what we call a traditional flip. So buying to sell through renovation. Now for me, that's not really excellent way of doing it, because for a start, you have to use a lot of finance. You have to raise a lot of money to buy property upfront in cash. And then you put it on the market, and it could take months and months to sell it, to hope that you can make a profit from it. Now, especially in today's environment with the market being so uncertain with coronavirus, nobody really knows what happens. And if you've actually used very expensive bridging finance or raising money to buy this property, and it's stuck in the deal and you can't sell it, you can't get your profit, and it could cost you money. And also, for a lot of people who are not familiar with renovations, just because you bought a DIY manual from a bookshop doesn't immediately make you a successful developer. So for that reason, I think flipping a deal and doing renovation is not really for beginners. But are there better ways of doing it? The answer is yes. So in one of my upcoming videos, I'm going to talk about how it is possible for you to flip not a property, but the contract that you've secured on the property. Because when you've signed a contract and it hasn't cost you any money, then any money that you make when you flip it on is going to be phenomenal. And let me give you an example. A long time ago, I had a friend, his name is Chris. So he worked for a land sourcing company, and his job was to find land with development potential, but without the planning. So what he would do is try to get the land very cheaply off the owners, and then apply for planning, and then he will flip the deal on. So the way he did it, it was to use a contract. So one day he came across this used piece of go-kart circuit that people used to go, go-kart racing, and nobody used it. It was overgrown, and he identified the owner of this land, and he approached the owner and negotiated a deal. And now there was no planning on this land, but Chris saw that there is huge potential. So in this deal, there was a contract between the owner and Chris, actually paid the owner somewhere around sort of £7,000 for an exclusivity for a period of time to get planning. I think there was a period of 6 months. So what happened was in the agreement that if there was planning, then they would proceed to buy the land, and then the owner would actually get rid of this piece of land, and everybody's happy. And if they couldn't get planning, then the owner would pocket the £7,000, and so there's nothing really for the owner to lose. And so the agreement happened, and then during that time, Chris approached the planning office, and they managed successfully to obtain planning for this piece of land. So eventually, now with this contract, initially worth £7,000, guess how much it was assigned to a major developer for that took over this land to build? Take a guess. Well, you might think £7,000 to make, maybe 100 grand would be good money, maybe $500,000. No, the answer was, it was an eye-watering £3 million just by flipping a contract to a developer. And when the development was finished, it was valued at £33 million. Now, I just want you to think about the idea of flips, that if you actually haven't used any money to make money, what is your return? So when we talk about return, let me introduce to you something called ROI. ROI stands for return on your investment. So if you've actually put out no money, and let's say you make whatever amount, let's say you make £10,000 from putting no money, what is your percentage? What's your percentage return? Well, one thing you can do is take out a calculator, type 10,000, and then divide it by 0 and see what answer you get. And what you're going to get from that is an error message. Because when you divide something by 0, any number that's divided by 0 is going to give you what we call an infinite number, is this symbol. Have you ever seen this symbol? It's called infinite return on investment, infinite return. That means we're not talking about 1%, 5%, or 10%. It's infinite, it's huge. And therefore, if you know how to flip deals without using any of your own money, just by using a contract, any money you make is infinite return. And that is going to come in one of my upcoming videos as well. So to recap, the 4 things. Number 1, the most important is the cash flow, because cash is king, right? If cash is king, then cash flow has to be King Kong. Ooh, King Kong. And number 2 is no money in. So after you bought the property, you want to refinance it immediately or as quickly as possible to get back the initial deposit so you can recycle your money. And I'm going to show you how to do it later on. Third one is capital appreciation. It's all speculative, and this is why it comes third. And finally, it's learning how to flip deals without using any money. So these are the four criteria. So watch out for one of the upcoming videos. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you click the subscribe button and your notification as well. And I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.